Hola! Welcome to Caso Cano today. We are at Coffee Pen Dulce. We've got a great show today. If Jenny could possibly keep her hat on, we would have an even better show.
Oh, I think it still is on, right? I did put one on today. Yeah.
Anyway, our Ruth is not here with us today, but we have the master of ill dispute, the most disputatious man I know in the whole world, Mr. Christian Cano. Let's have a warm welcome.
Well,
Bravo.
Thank you.
Bravo.
I brought my bless your heart hair today, but I don't think we're going to need it. But I want to let everybody know, today I wore my National Organization of Women's t-shirt, Equality.
Awesome.
And the reason I wore it was because last night on Netflix, we watched a movie called Suffrage. I guess came out in 2015, and I had not seen it. It was about It was an incredible movie. I was like, wow. I almost like bawled, and I was like, go. I mean, it was amazing what women had been through. We know that all of us who have mothers and sisters and wives and spouses that go through so much on a daily basis.
Or has worked for Trump. I mean,
we started already. Not even. I'm going to mic up here so you cannot hear me. I want to thank you for this is Coffee Upon Dulce. Thank you, everyone. Today is November 20th, almost a week to Thanksgiving for those who celebrate Thanksgiving. And then after Thanksgiving, for those who know us, we'll have our 1-year anniversary show in about 3 weeks. This is our 49th show. So we'll be celebrating our 1 year. I think it's going to be something special. We need to do something really exciting. And then after that show, we'll have our annual Festivus show. Y'all remember we had the Festivus show for the rest of us. And then we'll have the holidays coming up. So thank you so much for joining us, everyone who's watching us on Facebook Live now, who will be watching us on YouTube later, the many people who watch us later, and on Facebook later on. The Stony Rushing Show and the Matthew Ridenhour Show are now competing. Stony's still got about 8,000 viewers.
Wow.
Matthew's up until about 2,000.
Wow.
I'm not saying Matthew's less popular, more popular, but I think eventually Matthew's going to start catching up.
I
don't know.
I sense a grudge match coming up.
I think we should put them on at the same time. Like, that would be a lot of...
Watch them fight it out.
That would be great.
Grudge match to the death.
Yeah.
Republican versus Republican.
Oh my goodness.
Well, I put my money on Matthew, though.
I put my money on the Republican.
Well, our Halloween show, which I thought was fantastic because we could not, that was just incredible, your Joker outfit. That might be scaring people because that one seems to be people turning clicks off after like 30 seconds. So I don't know.
It was pretty intense.
I loved it. It was just incredible.
I loved it too. But sitting here, looking at him, I had to look away. I mean, because it was really.
That's life.
It was really intense. Yes, it was.
Okay, well, let's jump into our show. We're going to introduce our co-host and our guest. I want to thank Ruth, who cannot be here today. Our other co-host, she's at home. She has a family illness. Hello, Tara, who normally joins us. She's been so busy with the medic situation in Mecklenburg County. Miss Barbara, we have not seen you in a while. We do miss you, and anyone else who wants to be on the show as well. So I'm going to stop the electronics so the Russians don't spy on us during the impeachment. Alexa, stop. Thank you. And we'll start from our right because you're always right, so I can share the show and everyone else share it as well. Tell us who you are, what your button is, and your mug.
Hi.
Here we go.
I'm Jenny James Gain. I'm a board member of the National Organization of Women. And of course, I have my Tira Long button. Hello, Tira. And I have my Trans Pride lanyard here. It is Transgender Day of Remembrance. So,
and we're going to talk about that. That's very important. And we have a special guest here.
Hi, I'm Michelle Mathis, and I'm the Executive Director and Co-Founder of the Olive Branch Ministry, a faith-based harm reduction agency that covers 7 areas in the foothills and Piedmont area. And my mug is actually from the Iowa Harm Reduction Agency, and it says meet people where they are at. I have a problem with ending it in a preposition, but I'm giving them grace this morning. But that's what we're about. It's just meeting people where they are. And then my button is actually, I cheated. Instead of having multiple pieces of swag, I just have one button that has all my swag on it.
Wow.
And it rotates through. But it has my pronouns. There's information about Transgender Day of Remembrance, and then a lot of information about opioids and reversing overdose and faith and harm reduction.
Excellent.
Well, that's like a blip, a billboard, right?
It's called
I
a
mean,
beam.
A beam?
Oh,
beam.
wow.
Yes.
Oh,
That's
okay.
a great idea. We need to get some of those.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
pretty cool,
We-
actually. I was watching it when she came in. I was
Yeah.
like, it was just watching this little
It
billboard.
served its purpose.
Yeah,
That's
it
right.
drew me
That's
right in.
right.
I'm like, oh, moth to the flame.
Anyway, I'm just got hombre del pueblo, man about town, and I'm a regular here, between jobs.
Jeff, your button is
And
stop,
yes, my
stop
button is
torture again.
Stop Torture.
Okay.
The movie that's I think was released early. There were a couple of early
Mhm.
showings of it. It's called The Report,
Okay.
which the North Carolina Torture Commission had a showing, and I think the Duke Security Center, can't remember the name of it. They also had an early showing, but it'll be in general release, I think, within a couple of weeks. So if you want to understand the background of America's role in torture, you might want to introduce yourself to it through this movie, and then find out more about the North Carolina Torture Commission, the investigation. Very important group, very important what they're doing. And of course, my WikiLeaks cup. Julian Assange is still in jail, and very unfortunate.
Well, thank you so much, and you've been very consistent with your buttons, and I want to thank you.
Hello.
Oh no! Don't let my battery start to go out. I will back that off.
That's gonna be pretty funny. This is where Christian lives it on air. What? It'll be awesome. It'll be a classic.
My
one.
button's off.
My button is gun stop gun violence. Moms Demand Action. I'm a member of, and I totally support the moms who are fighting daily to change and have responsible gun laws that protect our children, and also, but more for gun safety. During the show, I have a feeling I'm going to have to get up there and take that battery out, which is going to be a first, but I have no shame. I will do that right in front of everybody, because I don't think we can put up with that.
Go ahead.
Are you tall?
Go ahead and
Oh,
talk.
excellent. All right, so we're going to talk about some very important issues today. Most importantly, we're going to talk about what you do, what your group or the things that you work on, and then we also want to talk about Transgender Day of Remembrance.
Yes.
Acronym is
T-Door.
TDOR, and then we're going to read the Constitution quote of the week. So this is going to be kind of a lighthearted. I also want to remind people as we get our pan dulce that if you are going to order your holiday tamales, cakes, and food and so forth, make sure you do that by this weekend so you can pick it up by next Wednesday. Manolo at Manolo's Bakery, who's one of our sponsors, wanted me to remind people not to wait to the last moment. You can show up at the bakery at the last moment, but you may not have a lot of options as far as tamales and the type you want. They make all kinds of tamales, from beef, pork, vegetarian, all kinds of stuff. Sweet. They'll make anything you want as long as they have the ability to make it. So Manolo's Bakery is one of our sponsors, and we do often have Manolo's here, but unfortunately I was not able to make it to the bakery yesterday, which I don't unfortunately do all the time. But we want to give them a plug. Manolo's Bakery on Central Avenue, immigrant owned, made by immigrant hands here in Charlotte, North Carolina. They deliver to all of the Southeast, mainly except Alabama, I believe. So he is rocking and rolling.
I wouldn't go to Alabama either.
No, I wouldn't. Yeah. So we're going to salute to Coffee and Pan Dulce. Everyone,
Waffle.
salute. Cha-ching, cha-ching. And please help yourself to
Well,
the
I like
English.
Alabama.
Yes.
I'm sure you
Just to be
do.
contrarian.
The group I love country music. Today's once again Pan Dulce is from Harris Teeter. So please help yourself to the variety.
Manolo's
of,
food is good, by the way.
It is very
Their cakes are to die for. I mean,
I had one this last week.
Yes.
Leche cake.
I just have to say, not that I feel slighted,
Sure.
but I feel this gives me an automatic invitation to come back.
Please, because we
So
always
I can try this fabulous
yes,
cuisine. I'm
and
just saying.
we always try to have you try one of the Mexican cannolis. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
The Mexican cannolis are things that we give to the guests specifically, and we want to have you back so that way you can try one of those because they are to die for. They are very, very creamy. But all the pandusa that they make there is it's traditional Mexican, but also a lot of the other Latin American countries.
Hi, Miriam. Hi. Hola.
Welcome to and you were playing Ruth today, so thank you for doing the audience thing. So let's jump right into what you do, who you are, all that kind of wonderful stuff that everyone wants to hear about.
All right. Well, first, thank you for having me. I'm so excited. When I got the invitation and we had the chat over the phone, I was very excited because any opportunity I get to kind of share, and pardon me because I am a pastor, share the gospel of harm reduction with no theology attached. That is kind of what I like to do. So I am the executive director and co-founder, like I said earlier, of the Olive Branch Ministry. We're faith-based harm reduction. That means that we use faith as a motivator to spread the word about harm reduction, reducing harm in the lives of primarily people who use drugs and sex workers. But we deal with a lot of different high-risk populations. But faith is why we do what we do, but it's not what we do. So we don't evangelize, we don't tie theology to any of the work that we do. In fact, we kind of ask other faith groups to leave theology at the door, right? So we serve 7 counties in this area. We run clean needle or syringe exchange in everywhere from Iredell to Burke, from Watauga down to Cleveland, and just that general area. That means that we give out clean injection supplies to people who inject drugs, and then we take dirty supplies back and dispose of them. We also run the Gaston County Opioid Overdose Response Team, and we're getting ready to expand that to Cleveland and Lincoln County as well. And then in Cleveland County, we do jail-based education, and we're getting ready to expand our education to include child protective services, families involved who may have lost their children or at risk of losing their children due to substance misuse in the home. So that's kind of who I am. I'm also the board president of the North Carolina Harm Reduction Coalition and serve as in one of the leaders for the National Faith and Harm Reduction Movement.
So we should probably mention the fact that Michelle's going to be our guest on Tired and Wired, which will immediately follow this, and we'll have a more in-depth discussion
Definitely.
about the issues that she's really on the ground looking at this problem close up. And I got a little bit more bookish. I'm purely an amateur in this area.
A lot of areas, but with nonetheless, I mean, anytime I get a chance to stab Jeff, it's going to happen. Just so you know, it's like a $20 bill in the ground. I've got to pick it up. I mean, come on. Wired and tired right there. Or I'm tired of him. I don't know. Which one? You guys vote.
I'm kind of edgy. I don't know.
You are pretty edgy. But yeah, it is so important and timely. And I think coming at this at different angles, you know, and you see the new, I guess it's a proposed bill. I don't know if it's passed yet about trying drug dealers for murder now.
It is actually goes into effect December 1st.
Okay.
It's called death by distribution.
Yeah. And I don't.
That just seems crazy to me.
Yeah,
It
and we
doesn't
can
seem like
talk
a
about that, but I
Yeah.
actually spoke at one of the committees who was voting, and it was present for both votes, both the House and the Senate in Raleigh.
Awesome.
Just spoke against it.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that's interesting to me is the kind of resistance that you get. So I was just thinking of there's some issues. I normally think, at least in this group, I'm a bit of a contrarian. I mean, you're all from Texas. I'm from California, so I'm odd man out here, right? So
More ways than one.
but in the case of the cannabis, for example, Christian and I met at a normal meeting, and we tend to think, well, we're really sort of in the majority here. Mm-hmm. And when I think of international issues and foreign policy, the three of us, I think, perhaps probably the four of us, are kind of in the majority of thinking about maybe we're fighting too many wars, maybe we're spending too much money, maybe we've overextended ourselves. So the things that I think about are, well, what is preventing what I think are broad democratic, small d democratic coalitions from getting their views heard, breaking down this resistance that people have. And in this case, in the case of the so-called opiate crisis, right?
Mm-hmm.
I actually have a question for.
Well, let me finish my point.
Yeah, definitely.
Is what sort of, it just seems so patently obvious to me from the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm,
Right.
that's the way most people should be thinking about it. And I think that is the way most people think about it. I think that the majority of people in the country say, yeah, if you're going to do something that's really bad for you, the next best thing would be to do something not quite as bad, and then the next best thing would be to do something not quite as bad. And so that whole framework of harm reduction makes intuitive sense to most people, right?
Not in the South. In the South, we still view substance use disorder or addiction. I don't like the A word, but substance use disorder, we still view that as a moral failing, and we don't see it as a brain health disease.
Exactly.
So it's not just a matter of educating the general public. Mm-hmm. We have providers that are still full of stigma and treat their patients with substance use disorder as criminals. And so we have to get past that. We have to educate providers, we have to educate politicians, and we have to get funding.
Michelle, can I just add in?
Yes.
She kind of
don't get me started.
She kind of touched on what I was going to ask.
Right. We're going to have a whole segment.
What you said was so important because on one of our earlier shows, we had a gentleman who's in the cannabis business here in North Carolina and South Carolina, and he talked about educating Black churches, Black pastors, because of the stigma attached to the word marijuana. Mm-hmm. And I told him in the Latinx community, which this show is targeted towards, our Latinx community, there is a stigma in certain families that you don't want to be the pothead, or the term marijuana is almost less than. It's more of it's like a class kind of. I don't know how it's so discombobulated, and it took me a long time, especially when I started educating myself on cannabis. I started attending the normal meetings to feel comfortable just saying the word marijuana, which is why I use the word cannabis, because marijuana comes with this. That's the pothead that tried to date my sister. That's the pothead that listened to AC/DC, or right. There's this image attached, which is not the image my family wanted. They'd rather you be a raging drunken alcoholic than to be on pot. Yeah. That seems to be
which is insane. Which is just absolutely insane.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
And Jenny, you wanted to say something in 30 seconds?
What? Can't do anything in 30 seconds.
25.
We want to welcome County Commissioner Mark Jarrell for watching us. Thank you, sir. Of course, we're waiting for a date that he's available to come back on our show. He was our third Most Watched show, Mark Jarrell, back in February of this last year.
That's interesting.
So,
wonderful.
Anyway, are you seeing a lot of these issues? Because the counties that you mentioned that you were primarily working in sound like they're very rural.
They are.
What are you seeing in those rural areas? And there's a reason why I'm asking this, because my first introduction to opioids is I worked for a clinic. It was a med spa, so I came on as the marketing director of that, and then we expanded, and one of the things we did is we moved and we bought out a medical clinic that did pain management, and they did it very much by the book, so I've had a little taste of this. But my deal is, are you seeing a lot of challenges in the rural areas, or what kind of challenges are you seeing? I mean, as far as...
There are a lot of challenges. I mainly deal with challenging the faith community, and that's actually how we met. I spoke in Mecklenburg County with the Council of Churches about faith and harm reduction.
You were at church.
It's a pretty cool church.
Don't-
I'm just
Alright.
saying.
Don't
I
tell,
don't.
don't tell my fan base.
They better
Um,
advise that boy first.
Yeah, but education is the key, and I think also the fact that we are limiting we're limiting most conversations to opioids.
Yeah.
Because the folks that are primarily hitting that demographic look like our elected officials, and we're not willing to discuss other substances
Thank you.
that are out there.
You are the first. Interrupt you.
Oh,
You're
that's
the
okay.
first non-person of color
Mhm.
that I've ever heard
Mhm.
who has said that.
Oh wow.
We've said it a lot on the show,
Yeah.
and I've had Jeff nod, and no one has ever that I have seen
Mhm.
that is a non-person of color that has admitted that the only reason we're paying attention to opioids
Oh totally.
is because it's impacting a certain
Yeah.
White people.
yes.
Yeah.
So fair.
If
Yeah.
it was crack, let him die.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, they
this
do.
is-
Well-
these are conversations that
Sure.
I have.
Okay.
These are conversations I have, and
Right.
you brought up.
Let me just annotate.
Okay.
Because the Libertarian Party
And
has been
Speaking of white people.
joined at the hip
yes,
with the movement against the war on drugs.
that's right. That is true.
And has
That
absolutely
is true.
called out the racial component of this
Yes.
with the Chinese opium dens, the Hispanics in the 20s, and African Americans, the crack
That is true.
epidemic in the
That is true. Yes.
in the 80s. So
You have.
I got nothing to apologize for. So go on.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I was going to say that
All three of you.
I got
as a society, we're never going to make progress, in my opinion, until a few things happen, right? In the war on drugs, right? Because the war on drugs has failed and it sucks. So we're actively engaged in a war against that war. But there's several things that have to happen. One, white folks have to own up to the disservice that we did to communities of color back in the 70s, well, 60s, even 70s and 80s, and even go back, if we want to address the whole thing about the Chinese and the opioids that were happening back then in the 20s. But we have to own up for that, or else we're never going to get the ear of communities of color now to be able to address the current issues. We have to own that, and it's a very difficult thing for a lot of folks to do.
Note to self: own up.
Yes. And then the other thing is that we have to realize, especially in the South, because I realize this goes out everywhere, but we're talking in the South, right? That in communities of color, that the church is the education
Yes.
center. And so we have to be able to figure out how to reach those faith leaders and leaders just in general in the community in order to get our points across, right? And to have that messaging happen. And so we've got to figure out how to do that racial reconciliation. Honestly, own up for our ish and then figure out how to move forward together, or we're never going to win this.
And I think one of the hardest things too, and this carries over to the other subject of TDOR, is when you see predominantly who's getting killed, the trans women that are getting killed, it's trans women of color.
Yes.
And so, but that still goes back to the Black church, because the first entity to reject them is the faith-based communities,
Yes.
which predominantly people of color are very, very centered around our church. Even in the Latinx community, the Catholic Church predominantly really is strong.
It depends.
And it does depend. It does depend.
It depends on the generation you are. Most of the undocumented and first generation Latinx people are evangelical.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Most of the second and third generation are Catholic because they came from Catholic churches and stuff brought them here. Just the immigration patterns.
Yeah.
But if you'll notice, and that's the reason that people are perplexed about our 9th congressional district, why so many Latinx people voted for Pastor Harris and voted Republican, was because of their stance on pro-life, and it was such an important issue to them that they turned a blind eye to immigration and Trump and all that kind of stuff. So it is a very interesting dynamic.
Well, and no candidate's a one issue candidate, but,
Sure.
but the one point I was getting to was dispelling transphobia and homophobia
Sure.
is the same thing about basically drug shaming people,
Sure.
you know, and
Mhm.
saying, "Oh, you're a piece of crap druggie if you do drugs." And I'm like, yeah, but you'll be the first one to crack open a beer, which alcohol is a drug, you know.
Right.
And so, but it may you may be crossing the legality lines there,
Sure.
but you're splitting a lot of hair.
But I think too that the education, something you said
Mhm.
about, people being pro-life, right?
Right.
So that's a big education point. There's a difference between being pro-birth and pro-life.
Exactly.
Because if you're pro-life,
Exactly.
then that means all life,
Right.
right? It doesn't
Michelle,
matter.
I'm so glad. We're just going to get along today. Listen, one of the misnomers
Uh-huh.
about our Latinx community,
Mhm.
and even though the evangelicals and the Republicans, especially in this region, think they have them in the bag because of the pro-life stance, and even Catholics in general.
Mhm.
Catholics in general, as a recovering Catholic, as a Lutheran, Catholics in general are pro-life.
Mhm.
We're not pro-birth. We're pro-life.
Mhm.
Most of us are. But we tend to be pro-all life, which means taking care of our planet, taking care of starving children, taking care of our elderly. That's really the message of the church. And now there are extremes in that who have joined the Catholic Church and are just really, very, very right-wing conservative in the Catholic Church. But the majority of Catholics, which is why the church is not for contraceptives, but 90% of women are on contraceptives. So, there's these things that our Latinx people are about. So I agree with you. We, as Democrats, I happen to be a Democrat, you're a Libertarian, we have to not be ashamed to be pro-life, but be pro-all life,
Mhm.
which means we're not against a woman's right to choose. We're not against, we want to focus on the things that make life better for people who are living.
Right.
And that's the difference. So thank you for saying that.
Absolutely.
Well, I've got a question. So you talked about the role of the African American churches in getting information out to their
Hi, Tony.
to their flock, right?
Mhm.
And
And not just African American churches, communities of color in general.
okay,
Yes. Yes.
well,
but I hear
okay,
you.
okay.
I hear you.
So they're informing their people about certain things, but the mindset in the South and in social conservative circles is that prohibition, abstinence, resisting temptation is something that they should be practicing. So they're not getting, at least in their theological environment, as opposed to a secular environment, they're not getting a lot of information about the history. They're getting history of race relations, but they're certainly not getting a history of what happened during Prohibition.
Mhm.
So they may not, in that environment, learn a lot about what happened socially, culturally, politically, and legally with this whole Prohibition movement. So they're not really understanding that. Shouldn't schools be teaching something about that historically? I'm just trying to figure out, I started off the conversation by saying that I think that the general public is kind of in agreement with this. We're in a comfortable majority when we're thinking about, banning things isn't the right way to go, generally speaking, right?
Mhm.
So why aren't they getting that message? Why aren't they getting that message that if you, claim that fire and brimstone is going to rain down on you for doing something,
i.e. using the bathroom of your choice, i.e. marrying the person that you love. If you ban things,
right?
okay.
I'm gonna say this
Sure.
is just my opinion.
Sure.
It's because the people that typically sit on school boards, again, look like me. The
Mhm.
people who make policies, who approve textbooks, look like me.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And so without getting into all of my background, right? Just on appearances.
Mhm.
And so I think that that's a problem. And the fact that, again, there's still the myth out there that substance use disorder, drugs in general, using that is, or being, not being monogamous, right? All that stuff is a moral failing.
Mhm.
And that's not it. We're talking brain health or personal choice.
Mhm.
And until we can have that kind of deep conversations and have people actually listen to this thing called science, You know,
Oh,
then yeah,
that's
then
kookery and witchcraft.
then
That
you know,
scares me.
and that's the thing. If people will
That was
listen
just
to the
words.
science conversation around actual brain health and how substances
Mhm.
rewire your brain, you know, you can take some of that moral conversation out. But we're so led by our morals that we forget that, you know, we were, in my opinion, we were created, but there's a reason our body that works the way that it does. And when it gets screwed up, we have to figure out how to make the body work right. Right? And so that's science.
Hi, Philip.
You know, we're gonna. For those who don't know, I'm sorry for stumbling there. I was thinking of something when you said my brother Philip. For those who know, on the first and third Wednesday of the month, we have a second show. It's called now Tired and Wired.
Tired and wired.
Tired and Wired with Jenny. And
Jeff.
we always debate an issue, and this week's is opioids, opioid crisis, and we're happy to
We're gonna
have
debate.
Jeff once again on it. And you're
Everything's
enjoying
a
the show,
debate.
I
Yes.
understand.
Yes.
Just so
Everything turns out-
just to
is a
clarify,
debate. This is
before
the
we want-
conversation. That's the debate.
we
So
everything here is a debate.
Yes.
Like
Well,
even,
yeah.
well, not
Well,
a
let me.
debate per se.
It's not
more of a
really a debate
discussion.
because let me say one thing as a preview. I'm helping a group within the pain management community to develop a survey,
Mhm.
and the survey is going to go out to everybody who's running for office, right? And the best of these surveys, as I know from running for office, is a survey that informs the person who's filling it out a little bit about what's going on in the world. To take a trivial example, you know, 2/3 of the American public believes that marijuana should be, you know, descheduled and decriminalized and probably legalized throughout the country. What is your view? You know, and so it's sort of a leading question,
Right.
and we want to know. No, people, this should be illegal because we don't want our kids doing it. You know,
Reefer madness.
so they've still got reefer madness. We want to separate out. So we want to pull in that kind of data about the beliefs of people who are actually running for office, whether they're incumbent or challenger. So
Okay. This seems like an appropriate time for me just to interject. Marijuana is not the gateway drug. Trauma is the gateway drug.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry.
No, I mean, but that's the truth. I mean, a lot of triggers.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times, and I know somebody that's been assaulted in a hate crime 4 years ago.
Mm.
I know that it changed how I look at the world, especially when you talk about violence. And I was assaulted because I came out as to some friends socially as trans, and I paid the ultimate price. And so, I mean, not the ultimate price, obviously, because I'm still here, but I paid a price that nobody should have to pay, that no woman should have to pay. And so I understand harm reduction. I understand changing society because I think they're all related, you know, and our society's so hung up on, you got to put this person in this box, you know, because we're afraid that's going to bleed over. It's almost like when I meet some people that are homophobic, it's almost like they don't even want to shake my hand because they think they're going to catch the gabies. You know, like all of a sudden they're going to wake up tomorrow and sing show tunes and want to wear a dress. And it's like, I'm like, well, if you wanted to sing show tunes after you met me, you probably wouldn't have sing them before. You just didn't have the courage to do it.
that's life.
There you go.
That's life.
And I just don't understand it, and why people have gotten so. It's so black and white. It's so people are drawn. There's not a spectrum mentality where it's got to be all. You got to either be a druggie or you're not, or this or that, and there's so many toxic terms used by people about people, you know, and I think that creates such a violent divide, and our verbiage is very violent in this country.
Yeah. I tell people I don't meet an addict. I meet people.
Yeah.
And if we could get past the labels and just recognize people for who they present themselves as and how they introduce themselves to us, it would break down so many barriers, right?
See them as humans and as
Exactly.
valuable, and see our neighbors. You know, I worked in reducing the homeless population in Amarillo, Texas, and I was the marketing arm of it. So I wasn't like a social worker or anything like that. But I had a lot of people, a lot of friends and family said, "Why are you doing that?" They're all a bunch of drug addicts. They're all a bunch of alcoholics. They kind of deserve to be where they're at. They choose that. I'm like, wow. If you knew my story, and that's usually where I stop them and go, I lived on the streets for 7 months. After I was assaulted and after I tried to take my own life, I said, screw it. I almost said, fuck it. I did now. And I lived in bathrooms, in my car. I gave up. So I swam down for a while. And because of that trauma, and again, I can so identify with that. When people meet me now, they're like, there's no way you were homeless for 7 months. And people are like, you can see them looking at me differently. And I think they realize, okay, if you can be homeless, anybody can be homeless. And I go, absolutely. It takes one thing to change your life so differently. And people just don't understand that. And when we start valuing people and valuing them, not for where they are right now, but because they're just a human life, that we don't want to just see them as statistics anymore. You know, like when we killed 500,000 people in the 9/11 wars for profit, we killed 500,000 human beings.
Well, thank you for sharing that story. I mean, I know that anyone who's watching and who watches this later, I do want to say...
Hi, Tara.
Yeah, hello, Tara, who's joining us. Cindy Lopez, Miss Ortega, Tara Long, Larry Gatewood is joining us. Thank you. Larry actually sent me or copied me on this wonderful picture of a story about... you have to go to my personal Facebook page, but it was really interesting. I think he lived in Mexico City or Mexico for a while, and knows a lot about that culture and history, and that's information that we want to share to people. But if you're watching this show, which many do later on at night, or over a glass of wine, or whatever you use, or a glass of pop or water, especially if you're young and you're watching this show, and I hope one of the things that you learn on this show is that many of us have stumbled once or twice or 3 times or 4 times in our lives, but we've been able to get up because of the help of others. And I hope that if you're out there and you need help and you feel like things just aren't going your way, you're wondering, how am I going to get out of this job I don't like, or my family is, whatever the situation is, who knows? Everyone's life is different. Even with people who you think are perfect are going through challenges in their life. Just know that there's always someone out there to help you. And so please know that it gets better. It gets better. And so thank you when you share those stories with us. And watch us and share this show with your family and friends. I want to just close on this because we need to go to our next segment. Tell us how people can get involved. Is that something that they do with your group? Is there? I know we have a website, olivebranchministry.org. And also a Facebook page. Olive Branch Ministry is the name of the Facebook page. It
is.
So can you tell us how people can get involved, or what you're looking for? Looking for volunteers, or what's going on?
Absolutely. We typically don't use volunteers to do syringe exchange, but we can always use volunteers to help us put together harm reduction kits, wound care kits. We're always looking to partner with people in the medical community to get expired medical supplies that we can then in turn use. Of course, a selfish plug on donations is always lovely because we are a nonprofit. But mainly, the biggest thing you can do is visit our webpage, olivebranchministry.org, and get educated. Educate yourself. We have tons of videos, tons of information out there, from fentanyl to opioids to what does syringe exchange look like to how to reverse an overdose, all of that information. And then support your local harm reduction agency. If you're in Mecklenburg County, Queen City Needle Exchange is here in Mecklenburg County, and they can always use support as well. So, Lauren, I'll you can pay me later for that.
Nice little plug, but that isn't very
well. I really like the term harm reduction.
I wrote that down. I really had never heard that.
Well, it's
term
doctors, I'm not a doctor. I'm purely an amateur in this field, but they have something. It's called the Hippocratic Oath from Hippocrates, and that is first do no harm, and that's their core rule, their core belief, the core of their practice. So if they're not doing that, they're really
not following that oath.
Being a doctor, right?
Well, they're not practicing medicine.
They're not,
you know,
that's right.
Good medicine. I
That's
mean,
right.
The whole point is not to have bigotry or stigmas. You leave that at the door.
That's right.
You know,
you manage.
there's other
You
places
help
for
people to
that.
manage the harm that they're suffering, and you're not looking for perfect solutions. You're always looking for improvements, systems that work better than other systems.
It would be good if the faith community had a Hippocratic oath.
And
That's
politicians
that's
too.
great.
We're supposed to.
that would be.
Just saying.
Yeah,
That's right.
honestly, I mean, if you go by,
Yeah.
I don't want to get into religion too much, but if you on any subject where there's this moral interpretation by religion, if they'd actually go by the New Testament, that would be fabulous because there's nowhere that says
Or the
hate your
golden
neighbor.
rule, which applies interfaith.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or
Absolutely.
couldn't we Isn't there a process to add it to the commandments, like the 11th commandment?
Well, the 11th commandment is something way different.
Can't we etch it in a stone, bury it in the
It's-
desert, somebody
yeah,
come out and go, look, we found the revised version.
Yeah, whoa.
That was just the
I think we
beta.
went down a rabbit
You
hole.
were only working with 10.
I told you, it's a Thunderdome.
It goes up to 11.
We'll write Bathroom Van Bishop and have him propose that in Congress. So we will do that.
And
So
work with that.
on that note, we're going to switch to our next topic, but I do want to encourage everyone out there, and also as you speak, there's so many topics that we talk about that, once again, I will say would be less challenging for us if we had universal Medicare for all. If we had Medicare for all, issues that we just discussed today, people would have access to more mental assistance, more treatment, harm reduction, and so forth. So I would encourage you to join the Medicare for All groups in your area. In this group, it is the Healthcare Justice North Carolina. Please join the group. They're also a branch of them. We're working on the medic issue here in Mecklenburg County to keep the county quasi-group medic ambulance service from garnishing wages on our marginalized people who may have outstanding ambulance bills. But all the nurses, Nurses for Medicare for All is a big group. They're more activists and advocates. They do a lot of canvassing and phone calling. So please join that because until we get that, there are issues that we would think that as human beings we would have to worry about, but unfortunately we're still worrying about these.
Miss you, Ruth.
Yes.
Miss you.
Yes, Ms. Ruth, I hope you're feeling.
But so Medicare for All, there's no reason to think that the problems that we've discussed
Sure.
would be resolved in a government bureaucracy, in a government
I agree.
takeover
I agree.
of the healthcare
And
system.
I know you and I.
So we don't need to go into the whole
No,
song and dance about that
I
now.
know you and I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
But right now,
Yeah.
that is the only legislation that is proposed. If libertarians have a better idea, put it up. If Republicans have a better idea, put it up. But how we operate in government is you propose a position and we vote on it. So if you have a better idea, put it in legislation and we vote on it.
Okay, you get the last word.
All right, we're going to switch to our next topic.
Wait, there's more.
However,
if you want to feel, I just want to give a little plug here for
She said.
if you want to feel better. If you want to feel better over the holidays
oh yes,
and
if you can
understand
see
what
that,
downward mobility looks like.
don't
this
pull
is
your
the-
mic out.
This is
Yes,
the
pull his mic out.
Yes,
This is
like
the-
him.
Great American Trailer Park Christmas Musical, which opens on December 3rd. And December 3rd, for those of you who are on a strict budget, is a pay-what-you-can night. And this is at
$1?
ATC Charlotte, which is Queen's University.
Oh wow.
And so it's not very far if you're in South Charlotte. This is a very fun night out. It's not safe for work. It's not safe for very young kids. You will have a good time, I promise.
Okay, so that means Jenny, you can't go. So all right. So,
It might harm my eyeballs.
so we've got about 10, 11 minutes left. Let's talk about 5 minutes before we read the Constitution. Great picture of you, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Let's talk about Transgender Day of Remembrance, which is today.
It is today. It is memorialized every November 20th. Usually the 7 days before that, usually beginning on the 12th, 13th, somewhere in here, we started having the Trans Awareness Week, and we started having discussions on a national level and a worldwide level. About 50 or 60 countries participate in TDOR around the world now. Hundreds of cities. It's not just a Charlotte or a Southern thing. At last count, and I'm not 100% on the accuracy, but worldwide, and these are the trans people that we know of, was a little over 300 people. And that number, you could add a zero to that. In this country alone, there's a lot of trans women that never get identified as a woman, never get by their chosen name because maybe they haven't been able to get their documents in order to switch their name out to their affirmed name. And so, it started in response to a brutal murder of Rita Hester in 1998. And so the first memorial was in 1999 by one of her close friends, Gwendolyn Ann Smith. And it's in response to the homophobia and the transphobia that so generates these grisly murders. And I mean, they're brutal. I mean, when I've put the names list together a couple years, I didn't have to do it last year or this year. But the people that do that for the local memorials,
Is there
it's brutal
going on here?
Yeah, tonight.
Yes, okay.
And so there's actually two of them, but the one that I'm involved with is sponsored by Charlotte Pride, Charlotte Trans Pride, Bank of America, Carolina Health.
And where is that?
It is, well, I prefer not to say on the air.
Okay, that's fine. But they can go to the events page on Facebook and find it. That's where I found it.
It's one of those things that it's not a celebration. It's a lot different than Transgender Day of Visibility, which is usually on March 31st every spring. It's memorialized. We're going to do an art project. We're going to have discussions. We have a reading of the names. It's tough. It's a lot.
I think I attended one at the Girl Comic.
Comic Girl.
Yeah, Laura.
I remember that one. Yeah, that was really powerful.
So Transcend, that's an offshoot of that, is still involved with this. We have two trans support groups here in the greater Charlotte area. I'm Transcend Charlotte. And then we also have a new one, Gender Lines. And so they're two fabulous groups. They do great work. They meet at different times of the month to help. They're also going to provide a kind of an online phone call counseling after the event, about an hour after the event. It's going to be from 6 to 8. So at about 9 o'clock, we're going to provide that. Because when we talk about this kind of stuff, people leave pretty much with a lot of emotions. And our suicide rate in our community is so high that 4 out of 10, and realistically more like 5 out of 10 of us have attempted at least once in our lifetime. I've survived 2 attempts. And it's there, and then we also will have a session on Saturday as well this weekend to help, people talk about it, manage the intense emotions, and we're trying to make this one a little bit more uplifting, and by having people there on site as well, having something that's kind of distracting. We're going to have food. It's going to be something that's going to kind of bring the community together, and plus all of our allies too, so it's a very important thing.
Jenny, does anybody want to say something before I want to talk about how that in our Latinx community, one of the important reasons we need to talk about these kind of things is like many other different communities. In our Latinx community, in general, like I said, Ruth and I can say in general, not everyone is the same.
Correct.
The philosophy in our community growing up, especially with families who've moved here, or like mine, 5th, 4th, 5th generation military, the teaching is don't stand out, just mix in. Mm-hmm. Don't call attention to yourself. If you're gay, you're gay. Just don't put it in my face. Mm-hmm. If you're this, you're this. Just don't put it in my face.
More or less, don't ask, don't tell.
Exactly.
Which is kind of a Southern thing too. Exactly. I mean, like, we know this exists, but we're going to talk about the boogeyman.
So it is difficult for many young LGBTQ people And even in their 20s, it's difficult because you're still getting over what you were taught to get involved in these kind of things because we're programmed or we're told that's bringing attention to yourself and that's not, you're going to bring shame to your family or whatever. I don't believe any of that, but I'm just saying there are people who seem to be. So that's why it's important to announce these kind of things so that if you do have the ability to go to a safe space where no one's going to judge you, grab a friend if you're afraid to go there by yourself. I think,
and one of the nice things too is that it's a very welcoming space.
Sure,
you know, and when people come, you know, we have it's funneled, and we have, you know, people where you're going to sign in.
Sure.
It's going to, you know, there'll be security. There is it's a very well organized event as far as.
Let me her talk.
Safe
We're
space.
gonna run
Yes.
out.
I was going to say, and for those who still are not able to, due to isolation, stigma, fear, be able to join an event like that, there is still a trans support hotline that you can Google.
Yes.
That's very important. That has a good friend of mine, Z, has done a lot of work with that, and so
I'm glad you said that.
I think that's really important because a lot of times it's, you know, we have community that comes together, but there are still, and it's not just young people.
Yeah.
You know, folks that have learned to live their authentic self, and at a later stage in life also need that support.
Like listeners.
Yeah.
Like me.
I don't have anything. No, I don't have much to say other than it's a memorial. You know, it's a serious deal.
Sure.
You know, people who know me know that I lived most of my adult life in San Francisco for 20 years during the during the HIV epidemic, and it's real important to understand what your options are, what your healthcare options are, and to reach out for help when you need it.
I wish there's. You said something about hotlines. Back in the day, shows you how old I am. Back in the day, there were hotlines you could call. It was the phone thing, and then there were chat groups you could become part of, and you could talk about issues that were important to you or whatever. And on the world of social media, Instagram, and all of these things, there aren't really chat rooms or groups. Are there? Are there social media?
Actually, there is.
Okay,
Yeah.
There's
great,
a lot of
great.
them. I know, and I can speak to a national level or a local
Sure.
level. So there's a lot of private Facebook
So
pages
let's give you an example.
for the trans.
Let's say there is a young person, Latinx person, who would like more information on and lives in Lincoln County or Gastonia or somewhere. Okay, and they have access to Facebook or Instagram. Who could they reach out to talk to them about things that they've never had anybody talk to?
So Gender Lines and Transcend Charlotte both have a Facebook presence.
So they could go onto the
They have a
Facebook,
public
go on the
and a
page,
private.
and they wouldn't be afraid that no one would shame them or anything.
It's just the opposite. So it's
Excellent.
ran by trans
Okay.
people,
Okay.
for trans people and their allies,
Excellent.
their friends and family and loved ones.
Okay.
There's a lot of paraprofessionals on there.
Okay.
There's a lot of topics.
Yeah.
And then we also have a private server with Transcend Charlotte that you do have to be invited into. But once you join Transcend Charlotte's private page and reach out to us, somebody will respond. They have a very well organized board.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So does Gender Lines. So
Excellent.
we have multiple ways of providing them information, getting them resources,
Support.
connecting with people, and most of all, if they do want to attend a live support group meeting,
Sure.
there's tons of them. There's tons for youth and adults, and Time Out Youth also does a lot of amazing things.
So
too.
Jenny,
Yeah.
you're on Facebook.
Yes,
Can they instant message you?
absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
Jenny, tell them your Facebook page name.
Well, my Facebook page name is Jenny James Gunn.
Okay.
And so it's JAYMES.
Okay, excellent.
And any trans person, gender nonconforming, non-binary, if you're in that spectrum and you're hurting, if all else fails and you didn't write fast enough when I said that, I mean, Trans Charlotte's very important. Reach out to me. I probably talk anywhere from 2 to 10 people a day.
Wow.
They just message me out of the blue. Not as much anymore because I'm not directly involved with the support group because I don't run this one. I ran the one back in Texas.
Sure.
But I do talk to a lot of people because I'm involved with so many public entities. They go, I don't know who else to turn to.
Excellent. And we're going to run out of time because we have to reset the table and get ready for the big debate, the wired and tired debate. Did you want something to say?
No, I was just going to say Timeout Youth is a great resource for youth. But in Hickory, since you mentioned Lincolnton, in Hickory we also have Outright Youth, which also is
our family lives out in Lincoln County, in Vale, which is real country, Cat Square. Anyway, anything you want to say before we read the constitutional quote of the week?
No,
I know we've got some great guests that are be coming up in the next couple of weeks that we're waiting for the dates. I don't know if you can mention any names yet, but
sure. We're expecting to have another damn Texan.
Oh my goodness!
But he happens to be running for the president of on the Libertarian Party ticket.
Oh wow!
So there will be Libertarian Party primaries. He's eager to win in North Carolina because North Carolina is going to have some influence on the presidential selection. So, as you know, 3.5 years ago, it was Gary Johnson, Bill Weld, and so.
So we'll have a presidential candidate on the show.
We'll have a presidential candidate on the show. Yeah.
Wow!
His name is.
We're just highfalutin now. I may have to wear my bless your heart wig.
We'll keep our fingers crossed. I think the date will be December 11th, but his name is Jacob Hornberger, and he runs the Future Freedom Foundation, and he's smart as a whip. I don't think he's ever run for office before, so we're gonna surprise him. With a lot of things about politics that he might not have run into before. Maybe we should get Matthew
Reinhauer on that show as well.
This is a grossly unique show, I can tell you that.
That's right. And
Thunderdome.
We've got another person that we're trying to confirm to be on the show as well. We also have another gentleman that I felt so badly. Sent me an email last week. They are starting a medical group that is moving here from Greensboro. They're medical clinics, and he wants to be on our show in December, so we'll get him booked as soon as we can.
Sure.
And of course, we do want to have Matthew Ridenhour back on the show, Mark Jarrell back on the show. And then I would like for us to have a show.
And Braxton.
Braxton. Yes, we want to get Braxton on the show. And before the holidays, which we only have about 4 weeks, technically before holiday season, which already started, I would like for us to all bring a dish that is unique to our family and our culture. It's probably tamales for me. But that's something that you want to share with everyone because I'm all about eating. So the holiday drink.
That's the absolute truth.
I'm coming for the audience just for the tamales. I'm saying.
Hey,
that's my family
when
tradition.
we had Matthew Ridenhour on the show, it was like the Beatles. We had all these people out there. Just hey, all right. I want to remind everyone, only because of the ICE raids still happen. Maybe not as publicity, but I assure you that the Trump administration, or the Cheeto-in-Chief administration, as I call them, will do things to take the focus on what's going on in the world. So they'll do ICE raids. I want to remind everyone to please get these Know Your Right cards. This card. I'm going to give everyone, and you probably have these already. These not only apply to people who are undocumented, as long as you are on American soil, you are protected by our Constitution, regardless if you're a citizen or not. And the only way that someone can search your car, go into your house, is if they have a warrant from a judge, not anything else. So you need to know your rights. The good news is a lot of our communities, especially our undocumented and immigrant community, they are educating, people are educating them on their rights. Action C, a lot of the Carolina Jews for Justice.
That's right.
A lot of other groups.
And there's a group up in Greensboro, which I'm somewhat familiar with. I'm on their mailing list.
Excellent.
They actually educate people by engaging in basically play acting, sort of role playing.
Exactly.
So they do it in an environment where you got to stand up and interact and walk through it, and not just kind of have the card and have it in the abstract.
Exactly.
So
and lastly,
very important to understand
before we read the Constitutional Quote of the Week, I just want to remind people as we go into the holiday season, as your family members or your kids, go to friends' houses for holiday parties, whatever. Make sure you follow the Moms Demand Action Be Smart model. Make sure that you're smart, secure, model, ask, recognize, tell. Most important part of this is if your kids are going to a family member's house or you're going to a family member's house, there's nothing wrong with saying, do you own a weapon? Is that weapon locked up? Those are things that people may be too shy, but we ask people, do you have a dangerous dog? Do you have a pool? These are things that we want to keep. I'm not suggesting that someone's going to get too drunk and pull a gun out and shoot people, because that's not the people I hang with anymore. But I'm just saying is that be smart. 87% of suicides occur. 87% of suicides that handle a gun are successful. And usually it's a gun that they find from a family member. And those are, in this time of year, when people maybe start to feel blue, we want to make sure that we protect them as much as we can.
Yes.
So,
you do need to demand
yes,
good California wine, Sonoma County.
California wine. All right, so let's read the Constitution Quote of the Week. Who would like to read that? It is going to be on page 21.
I set my glasses down.
You want me to read it?
So I can't see.
Please,
anything.
can you read?
I am educated. I've been in this high school for 7 years.
You're Texas educated.
Yeah.
All right, let's go.
Woo! Number 43, the national education.
That's right.
Woo! Amendment number 1. I can count that high too. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble, or to petition the government for the redress of grievances.
Mr. Scholar?
Well, First Amendment is under attack all over the world, and for example, there was just a news story the other day about the spying that occurred of Assange when he was in the Ecuadorian embassy. So there are certain types of speech that are protected between attorney and client, and
I think this is so perfect, because as we get into the holiday season, Franklin Graham is going to start this war on Christmas rhetoric that happens every year around Christmas. I use the term holiday season. I'm sorry, I use the term holiday season because I really celebrate from Halloween until probably Mardi Gras. So it's a really long holiday season. But I use Christmas. But not everyone celebrates actual Christmas.
Right.
In my professional world, we try to make it holiday and use gender neutral terms.
Well, it's inclusive too.
Yes,
you have some people of the Jewish faith, maybe it's Hanukkah,
which is why I
for
celebrate
them,
Festivus as well for those who don't. And so it's interesting.
I just call it party time.
Yes, it's party time, but
beer 30 in some circles.
I don't want I'm all about freedom from religion,
Yeah.
even though I'm a person of faith.
Yeah.
Because anyone who's ever grown up in Texas may know this. If you did not grow up Southern Baptist, like me, I grew up Catholic.
Recovering Southern Baptist preacher.
So we know.
Confess.
We know the biggest con job in the world is for your friends to say, "Hey, you want to come to my church and watch the Christmas musical?" And you're like, "It's free food." The first time you do it, you're like, "Oh crap, I'm never coming again," because they try to save you.
It's a pretty expensive free food.
It's always a great performance, but then there's always ends at let's bow your head and raise your hand if you want to be saved. Like, oh crap, how do we get out of here? Everyone's staring at us. So we know better than Cody.
You'll have a much greater holiday season if you check out the Great American Trailer Park Music.
All right,
you will laugh till you cry.
We're going to end the show. It's been a great show. Thank you so much. Please come back. Tell us when your schedule's available. We'll book you on. I'm going to start the music. Tell us where you're going to be, and and then we'll get ready for the next show. Alexa, start Pandora.
I'm going to be at T-Door tonight. If you are interested in coming to the event, we do have it posted on Charlotte Pride's calendar on Facebook.
I never know where I'm going to be. It's where my people are. So look for me in the street.
I'm going to be going to a musical up in Salisbury called Bright Star, and it's a very interesting musical written by Steve Martin and Edie Brickell, and it actually takes place based on a story in North Carolina. And then, of course, in a couple of weeks, I'll be going to this and see you at the theater.
All right, I will be. I have no idea. So watching the Cowboys and the TCU play.
Black Friday. Where are you shopping on Black Friday?
I online.
Okay.
I never go out to.
Cyber
That's
Monday
just
for
crazy. All right, everybody,
Okay.
wave goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.